We good?
Yes.
Excellent. So I don't need to watch the QA or any of that, right? Just go.
It's all taken care for you.
Fantastic. Full service, managed service. Love it. All right. Thanks, everyone. Really appreciate everyone attending. And I really do appreciate the folks, Gianni, Christian, everyone that got together and helped to organize this. It's a great idea, and just really honored that they would ask me to be involved, and really happy that I could be involved. So what we're going to talk about today is, does your data have a story? Find out with Oracle Analytics. So in general, this is going to be a talk about data storytelling. So, data storytelling is a bit different than other styles of data visualization. I'm going to try to sort of make that clear as we go about how this might be different than what you do today. It is a completely sort of different use case. It's one that you probably have requirements for. You've probably just never been asked to do it, or perhaps not very often. And I'll try to explain when's a good time to engage in data storytelling, and what sort of approaches and use cases it would be good for. So this is me. So I'm the founder and CEO of Red Pill Analytics. It's been around for almost 6 years now, and those are some of the social media avenues. If you like to follow me, I'd be honored if you do that. I really appreciate it. This is some of the things that Red Pill is engaged in. So if you're interested in modernizing your stack, a lot of times that means going to cloud. If you're interested in some of the new distributed platforms that you can find, if you're interested in new approaches to analytics, such as what we're going to look at today with data storytelling and Oracle Analytics, we do a lot of that, of course. So if you're interested in learning what we might be able to do for you, please reach out. We'd love to talk to you. And then from a technology perspective, these are some of the technologies we use. Obviously, we started as an Oracle Analytics company, so those things are still, pivotal to what Red Pill does. But we are a little bit more in the Oracle Cloud today than on-prem, and we also use a lot of other technologies as well, where we layer in with our Oracle customers to try to get the best value. So if you're interested in the modernization, what it might look like to go to cloud, please reach out. We'd love to talk to you. So data storytelling, the main sort of point I can make about it is that it's more about the journey. And it's very similar to what you do in a talk like this. You make points, you make arguments, you visualize data, and you tell a story along the way. So it's not as much about a finished product, such as a dashboard that is designed for hundreds of users. It's more about telling a story for a very specific time and place. Now, this story can be repeated perhaps at your quarterly meetings, at your weekly meetings, where you go over a lot of the same data points. And that is also a story, but it's not about designing the dashboard that a series of users come into every day. It's more about walking through a series of data points, telling a story where each data point builds from the next one to usually try to argue some sort of point, or not argue, that's probably the wrong term, but make a point, right? To try to prove something using data. And there's not a lot of tools, analytics tools on the market that do this, that help you do this. There are things outside of your traditional analytics tools, such as notebooks, which are very, very good at this, or interactive notebooks, but there are very few analytics tools that are actually optimized for this, and Oracle Analytics is one of them. So, tell a story. It's about the journey. It's not really about the finished product. And we're so used to thinking about dashboards as the only way, or even pixel perfect reports, right? Those that are delivered, as being the only way to really tell a story. but that's just simply not the case. I love this example for Spotify, using data points to tell a marketing story, in this case, writ large in front of all of us, where they took data points and told it interesting and you know, funny story that really got a lot of people's attention. So we have to start thinking about, you know, dashboards. Of course, dashboards will always be there. They'll always be a part of our analytics tools, but they're kind of like cup holders. You have to have them, and people will use them, and they are very, very important. However, as we move into the next phase of analytics and what data can do for our organizations, it's really more about finding interesting ways to make these data points relevant. Sometimes that is in a data storytelling scenario like I'm doing. Other times it's about making those data points available for other applications. But it's not just about dashboards in the way that we've thought about it in years past. And by the way, we're inside of a data visualization story right now. Those of you that are clever, I'm sure it's all of you, by the way, might have noticed that I'm already in Oracle Data Visualization. I have been for the entirety. So the Oracle Data Visualization is a tool that you can use to give a presentation if that presentation happens to be about data. So if we come up here and you can see the way that we can enter our data visualization story is to go to narrate and then present. And that's what I did before the talk got started. So we are inside of Oracle Data Visualization. Now, several of the first palettes didn't really have any data in them, and we're about to enter the palettes that do. But it's just you can wrap a data visualization story with all the sort of collateral material you need to give a complete story that sometimes includes data, sometimes does not include data. So if you think about giving this presentation at a quarterly event, at a meeting where you walk through a bunch of data points in succession, this is a good way for you to make sure that your story is consistent from one time to the next. So what we're going to talk about today is UFO sighting data. So I've given this talk quite a bit in the past. It's been updated with the latest version of Oracle Analytics, and I'm actually in Oracle Analytics Cloud. There's a website that collects sightings of UFO sightings data. Been doing it since 1903 is the first recorded sighting. And that's the data set we're going to be looking at. And so we're going to have a little bit of fun with this. I know we're probably all sick of seeing the COVID-19 data sets. So let's step back from that. Let's have a little fun with UFO sightings. So the data set, as you can see, starts, I misspoke, I think it's 1906, goes all the way to 2013. There may be additional years in there that I haven't pulled. I've had this data set for a while. So we can see, total number of sightings in this data set, 78,000 and change. Duration in hours. So one of the data points collected when you report your UFO sighting that you're positive you saw is the duration of the event. So how long did it last? Did it last 5 minutes? Did it last 10 minutes? And that's one of the data points that we're also going to look at in conjunction with sightings. If we take a look at our graph, our line chart of the total data set, we can see obviously we start to pick up a lot as we get into what I'll say is the modern era. But we do have some jumps here. And so what we need to do is, we can start with this visualization as we tell our story, but we definitely need to drill into a few of these bumps, right? So we see some bumps that aren't obvious in this visualization. So what we need to do as part of our story is to drill into some of these things. Now, of course, dashboards allow you to drill in, but dashboards don't direct your drill. They don't, you've got a lot of options, probably a lot of different dashboard pages. So that's the important aspect of data storytelling, is the idea that you're directing a story to a particular conclusion, but the journey is every bit as important as that final aspect. So we're going to dive in a few of these next canvases and see, look at these different data sets, or sorry, these different timelines a little bit closer. And obviously we'll probably drill into a lot of this modern era as well when we get there. So we had a little bump there beginning in 1940, or really 1947. And it wasn't all that obvious when you looked at the overall data set, but as we drill in, we can see what I did here was I added a constant line for 1946 to give you some idea of there was a paradigm shift here. And of course, I have my theory about why, the consciousness of UFOs, but people started seeing them more than they did before. It's because it was a part of the consciousness, especially after the Roswell event. For those of you that may not be, from the US, you may not know too much about this, or maybe you do, maybe it's one of those things that crosses borders. But, we had this incident in the 40s where everyone in the United States was pretty sure that we'd just been invaded by UFOs. So there's still a lot of debate about what actually happened there. I think most historians agree that they weren't little green men on our planet. However, there was a long time before some of that was settled. And so obviously when you've seen, and I'm making the argument here using data as much as I can, when you have seen or believe you've seen an invasion, obviously when you look up into the beautiful sky and see a light, you probably want to report that now. So we can see that, in comparison to the year before this bump, there was a lot of activity. So UFO sightings have become a part of our conscious. And this constant line is a real effective means for you to do that. Now, when I draw a constant line, it's just that, it's a constant. So this is not the type of thing that you would probably do on your ready-built dashboards. I guess there are some scenarios where a constant could come into play. Maybe constants like time and place, but just number of sightings, obviously that's fluid. So a constant is really valuable when you're doing when you're engaged in data storytelling. So there was another little blip from 1965 to 93. And, we can see, again, I've done the constant of where we were at in 1964 to give you some context of, are we truly in a different paradigm? And you can see that, there are some dips, some hills, and some valleys, but in general, with the trend line, you can see that generally we're going up. And again, you could have a lot of theories about why that's the case, but with the space program in the United States and in other places during that time, it was again a part of the culture. It was a part of, watching on the TV these space missions, going into space, going into orbit, going to the moon, probably caused people to at least look up a little more and maybe start to think that space travel is possible. And perhaps there are explanations for these lights and flashes and balls of light we see in the air. So, again, making a fun argument with data where we can definitely see it at least correlates. Whether it's causation, who knows, but this is the time during which The United States was most active with their missions to space. And then obviously there can be a lot of explanations for this huge uptick we hit right at 1994. So I like to think that it's because of this amazing TV show that came out that year called XFiles, where, you know, every week we saw little green men, at least every other week, or maybe every third week when the story was about aliens. Well, you know, we were explaining conspiracies, and a lot of people were bought in to the subject matter of that TV show. Now, it also might happen to correlate with the fact that there's probably during this period is when the UFO sighting database became online, where you could maybe submit your sighting over the internet as opposed to calling and giving it over the phone. But I like to believe that it's 100% about the X-Files. So, but we can definitely see with our constant here from where the data set was in 1993, we had this incredible uptick, you know, way outpaces anything that we'd seen prior to this time. So we can theorize that something special happened around 1994, at least with what we think about when reporting UFO sightings. And I'm, you know, convinced it's 100% about the X-Files. So for the majority of the, well, I think for the rest of this storytelling endeavor, we're going to be looking at this modern era. So the data set that we're honed into right now is 1994 to 2013. So most of the screens you see from here on out involve that data set. So day of the month, some interesting things showed up as we take a look at years 1994 to 2013. And we can see that there are 2 days in the month that far outpace the others. They're the 1st and the 15th. So, you know, without any other data sets with, I don't know, lunar cycles or whatever, to try to find a correlation, I made the best guess I could, and that is that that's payday. And does that mean that people are running around with money in their pockets, therefore maybe they're out at night and available to see things? Maybe they're having some libations, a few too many of this, and they see some things that perhaps probably wouldn't see in a more sober mindset. I don't know if that's it or not, but it certainly is clear that, you know, we can't ignore the fact that there are 2 very particular days of the month where we see the most sightings. Now, I probably should have done some research to figure out at what point did it become common for the 1st and the 15th to be sort of the days that people get paid. I have no idea. Probably should have done that. But in general, we may think that this is something that would only happen in the modern era, because perhaps the 1st and the 15th is something that we've adopted, you know, much later. But actually, it's not the case. So this is me playing around with the data a little bit. Over here we see the modern era, and over here we see, you know, the entire data set. And this is just a couple of techniques for me to try to make the outliers a little bit more obvious. This is me actually plotting the number of sightings against itself on a scatter plot. This is just a way for you to give a nice consistent look of the outliers so that you can compare 2 graphs side by side. And then I added the min and max so that you can make it a little bit more clear about these different data sets. Now, there probably are, well, there are some techniques where we could try to overlay these 2 data sets, but it's kind of difficult if you think about it, because one's being filtered, one's not being filtered. with a certain set of years. If you have ideas for how you might could do that in the same visualization, love to hear it, all ears. I had a couple of ideas, but this is the direction I went instead. Just showing two different visualizations for the two different years side by side. There are, you know, a bar chart would probably do this as well, an area chart perhaps, but again, that's trying to put things together on the same visualization, which is not that easy. You would have to actually store the metrics together, is one technique you could use other than this technique. So this is me trying to show that, you know, the 1st and the 15th, unless the history is that we've always been paid on the 1st and the 15th for the entire data set, then so be it. But if that's not the case, then there's got to be some other explanation, which I don't have at this moment. So now if we look at what is the month that has the most sightings, so that is July, and there's a, you know, there's a very specific meaning that July has in the United States, specifically the 4th of July. But, you know, you could theorize some other reasons why there might be more sightings at this time. It's summer, people are outside, people are outside at night more than they probably usually are in the winter, fall, spring, or winter months. So, and you know, the data sort of, the data around July sort of supports that. But it is clear, undeniable, that July, which has almost the exact same weather most years as June and August, has a lot more sightings. We can drill into that a little bit further by looking at a polynomial trend. So this is, you know, Oracle data visualization has some really great techniques for visualizing data sets to look at sort of different aspects of them together in the same visualization. And this is a case where I'm actually going to pop over to the visualize screen to kind of show you how I did this. Bear with me one second. Yeah, so the way I did this was, you know, the x-axis, sorry, the y-axis was row count. So, you know, we're just seeing the row count over the timeline, right? Day of the year. But then I was easily able to add the quarter as the color. So if we see, what is it? That's it, right? Show assignments. We can see that the color, just to give yourself that nice little distinction from one quarter to the next, is quite easily done by just adding that dimension to the color aspect, or the color assignment, I guess is the proper term. So it gives us a really nice look at the data set one day at a time, but also broken down by quarter. And it becomes pretty clear to see that we certainly do have something going on day 185, right? So of course we have, you know, this quarter that day is part of does have more sightings in general than the other quarters, but it's sort of undeniable that there's something interesting going on day 185 in the United States, and some of you might be able to already guess what day that is. So as we move forward, yes, day 185 is indeed usually the 4th of July. So I've broken it down by, sometimes it's the 3rd of July, and sometimes it's the 4th of July. But it's most often the 4th of July. So for those of you that are from across the pond, the 4th of July is our Independence Day, and we like to shoot off a lot of fireworks. And so now, is it people, you know, thinking fireworks are UFOs? There's probably some aspect of that. But also, if you think about it, that's the day of the year where people are outside at night in the US the most, probably more than any other day. looking up at the sky. So yeah, there probably is something to do with a whole lot of lights and things up in the air, but also our focus is definitely on the sky at night. So, by the way, this is just a stacked bar chart, 100% stacked, where we filtered down to day 185. So, you know, it's a little bit of a sort of a hack. I think there's bullet charts and other ways to do that, but it just felt like the right way. So you can see, and plus when you do the fully stacked, it gives you the percentage instead of the count. So in Oracle data visualization, this is a really nice way to sort of cheat the system and focus in on a data point that is in conjunction with another graph. You probably would never expose this on its own, but given next to the sightings during day of year, it's kind of a powerful combination. So now we start to kind of shift to, you know, hour of day. So clearly we can see that, you know, the hour 21 and hour 22, and those of you that are used to the 24-hour clock probably don't have to do the math like I do, but that's 9 and 10, I believe. So 9 and 10 p.m. So clearly, you know, it's when it's dark out, right? So with daylight savings time in the US, 7 and 8 o'clock sometimes are dark and sometimes not, depending on the time of the year. But every time of year, 21 and 22 is dark. So again, you have a whole lot better chance of seeing flashing lights. I've never understood why our alien visitors feel the need to make everything so shiny and flashy, especially if they're trying to, you know, not be detected. But maybe it's part of their technology. Who knows why they need so many blinking lights. And in Star Trek, you know, there was blinking lights all over the bridge. So I think it's probably just something to do with warp speed, not sure. But flashing lights are definitely required. So I think, you know, to be able to see those flashing lights, it's a lot easier to see that at night when you're undistracted, right? And so this is me just adding a reference line, which is average. So this is one that is consistent. It's not a constant, I should say. It is data driven. And it just is a great way to plot some sort of a reference on your data set. So then we can also take a look at, again, we are looking at the modern era, right? We're also focused in now on those hours, 21 and 22. You can kind of see what I mean by building a story as we go. We've slowly applied filters and aspects that we want to drill into or dive into in our data set as we go forward. And so this is the kind, so I think that's an important point to take away from this is if you do engage in data storytelling, it's sort of like, I don't know if this phrase will translate to those of you not from the United States, but in the US, we have you probably have something comparable. You may just call it something else, but show your work. You know, I have a 12-year-old about to be, he's 12-year-old son in middle school and working on his math, which is all happening at home right now. So I'm getting to see it up close and personal. There's the idea of showing your work. You've got to be able to demonstrate how you got from step A to step B to step C with sort of an audit trail, I'll say. And that's a big part of what data storytelling is. If you talk to a lot of end users of data visualization tools that are given a series of dashboards, for those dashboards to be effective, you really do need trust. And this is one of the reasons that quite often people are end users who don't have trust, or at least haven't built that trust, often want to, you know, say, just give me the data, let me dump it out to Excel, or let me do whatever it is I need to do to try to have faith in that data. So a good part of a data storytelling endeavor is to build that trust during the journey. So it's about showing your work from one step to the next. So what we've done here is we've slowly built up some filters, and we've slowly built up some data sets, some context that we're interested in. And so now that we're further on in the journey, we can see that we've sort of started to focus in on some areas. This is just a geographical, the map of the United States with sightings, so number of sightings, and we're using the size to map to, how many. So it's just a nice way for you to sort of visualize where a lot of these sightings are happening. And now we'll sort of take a look at, up until now, we've mostly focused on number of sightings, but now we're starting to look a little bit at duration as well. So there's really two key aspects. Really, there's only two metrics here in this data set. One is, was it a sighting, yes or no? So 1 or 0, right? So how many sightings, or at least row count, right? But then also for each sighting, there's a duration in seconds. So how long did it last? Was it a blip and was it gone? Or was it a disk sitting there hovering over me that I got to see for a while? So these are these two metrics taken together can show you, we can look at this on a scatter plot. We can look for outliers. I think what's interesting here in this visualization, and there may be some folks on the webinar that know this stuff better than me, but this seems like an outlier to me. And I tried it with k-means. I also tried it with the hierarchical option. But I guess taking duration and sightings together, this is why our outliers are down here. But this is really, California. That seems interesting, right? So we've got, seems way out there on its own. Oracle Analytics didn't think of it as an outlier. So I probably need to do a little bit more research on why that's the case, and perhaps there's others who do understand this better than me. But this is just a way for us to take a look at two metrics together, see how they kind of correlate, and see if there's anything interesting going on. So now we have duration, we have number of sightings, and then we also have the shape. So it's not a metric, it's a dimension, but it is interesting to see how all of these things kind of correlate. And having metrics together that have a different, a different grid or a different size, it doesn't really, sometimes it's really difficult to try to find a meaningful way to visualize those things together. And with the combinations of color, size, and different data visualizations techniques that Oracle Analytics gives you, I thought this is one of the more interesting ways to do that. So, so we can take a look at number of sightings is what's affecting the color, and then the duration is affecting the size. And then you can also see just that these are the different shapes that were reported. So whereas we don't have as many sightings of the saucers, right, the disks, as we do some other shapes, it is the longest in duration, right? So if you think about it, lights, fireballs, all the different shapes that we can see here, fireball, lights, these things are there and gone, where supposedly, I guess if you see a literal flying saucer, it hovers there for a while. So that's why the duration of the disk is sort of interesting. But it's also clear that we do see some duration of fireballs and light. Flash, obviously, not as the duration is it's there and gone. Changing, you know, that's probably bad data. Let's be honest with you. Let's be honest. But teardrop and cigar and formation, again, that's probably perhaps bad data. These things don't stay around very long. So they're flashes and they're gone. So I thought this was a very interesting way to visualize several things going on at once in a meaningful way. And then obviously our tag cloud, right? So I know there's a lot of debate about whether or not a tag cloud is a meaningful way to visualize data. Also, I just used filters to get rid of a lot of the meaningless words. Probably what I should have done, not probably, absolutely should have done, is use the data flow to clean this data set up in a more repeatable way. But it was late last night, so I got it done the best way I could. So, I mean, I think this does give you some idea of sort of, you know, you start thinking about the, trying to give some color, not literally, but some sort of context around, you know, what this sighting data set looks like. And it's not just the fact that it happened. It's not just the fact that it's a shape, and it's not just the fact of a duration, but there is some, you know, some context about each of these sightings. And I thought about doing some sentiment analysis on it, and perhaps that would be meaningful. I'm not certain it would, honestly, because if you're reporting this, if you're citing it, and you certainly believe it happened, and I don't know if it's the kind of thing where you'd have positive or negative. There's probably some sentiment experts on this call that know whether or not fear are the sort of things that can be picked up by AI. I'm not certain about that, but there might be some interesting sentiment that we can do. Outside of that, one of the ways to really provide context of a data set, whether or not the experts and the purists think a tag cloud is the right way to do it, I feel like it's a very meaningful way to try to sort of set the stage to give you some idea of what people are reporting without pouring through line by line the data set. So you can kind of see from the comment section, these are some of the words we highlighted. And wow, I finished way early. I'm really sorry. Good thing I was last. Really sorry about running so quickly through this. I think maybe I just didn't time it well. So, but anyway, you know, if you think about this data set as a whole, as an example, obviously, I think there's very few people on the call that probably need to tell a story about UFO sightings. That being said, I hope it's been fun for you as a way to sort of see how the data storytelling, you know, approach is much different than the approach we take with just building dashboards. It is about starting at ground zero, moving through a series of data sets. And, you know, frankly, Oracle Analytics is one of the few tools. It's certainly one of the few, it's certainly probably, I don't know of another click and drag tool. Obviously, there's interactive notebooks that can do some of this, and it's sort of designed to do that. But I don't know of another data visualization tool, complete data visualization, click and drag tool that does it for you in this way. And we'll just take a quick look at how it happens, right? So any visualization that we have, I built all of these different canvases throughout my, you know, sort of data visualization endeavor, right? And then even my slides that some of you clever folks out there may have known I was already in data visualization or Oracle Analytics. Some of you may not have noticed that, but really it's just images I created and then brought into the tool. I think if you wanted to use it as a you know, as a presentation tool, your mileage may vary, and you may run out of runway in some cases, and probably have to build the slides elsewhere, which is what I did, honestly. Build the slides elsewhere and then bring them into the tool. Whether or not it'll ever be an effective tool that you can go into and really from A to Z build a presentation, I don't know. But really there's a visualization called image, and you can drag that and drop it. You can build text boxes and lists. So you could probably effectively build some slides. I just didn't have the patience for that. So I just built the slides elsewhere and brought them in. So you can see here were all my different palettes that I did in Google Slides, honestly, and then exported and then brought in here. So the data storytelling really began here. So the real data elements didn't begin until this canvas. And then the way that you sort of put your story together, you can have these canvases in any order you want. This is something that's different from some of the last releases of this tool, where there wasn't really a separation between canvases for visualizing and presenting. It was a little bit not quite so clear. Now this narrate button makes it very, very easy for you to build up your data story. So you can see any canvas that I've created is demonstrated here in a pretty easy to use way. It's kind of like a, Google Slides sort of interface, where I can see the thumbnail of all my slides here. And then I can literally click, drag, reorder, change things, right? So here are all the different canvases that I put together into hopefully a coherent story, so that I could then just present. So that's how it was done. And, I see a lot of people run through data sets and meetings using slides, and inevitably you're linking it to probably an Excel sheet. If you're using PowerPoint, if you're in Google Slides, you're probably linking it to a Sheets data set. And those things are fine, but I think that if you really want to tell a story, do it right inside the data visualization tool. And although you might be frustrated in how hard it is to build the non-data slides, when it comes time to actually build the data-driven slides, which, let's be honest, those are the important ones, you'll be glad that you're actually inside of a data visualization tool, as opposed to being inside of an Office tool or a presentation tool. So these canvases, or these each canvas is a combination of several visualizations. So in the cases where I used pictures to try to, maybe be funny, it's hard to tell whether those jokes landed, but to try to add some color around it in a way that you might do inside of a presentation is really quite easy. You can just do that with the image visualization, which is what I did here. And so we go back to visualize. You can see the image visualization is just another visualization that can be selected. And you go through here and you can see that I just layered in images on this canvas, same way here. And then as I got away from some of the images and sort of focused a little bit more just on the data narrative, you can see it's just multiple visualizations put together on a canvas, something really simple to do in Oracle Analytics, so that you can tell your data story. So with that, I know I'm a little bit early, but I'd still love to take some questions if anyone has any. I'm not sure how this works, Gianni, but I guess people will.
So there are not real questions that came in written, at least so far. They are probably all looking outside the window if they see something.
Okay.
So no, I didn't.
So there were some. I saw that there were some comments, but I didn't read them.
Yeah, it was mainly comments about the drinks coming after and things like that.
Well, Well, at least I didn't waste anyone's time. By all means, talk about the drinks.
No,
So
just as
you
a,
guys
just as a
do know that
question.
it's 11 o'clock here. So I'm gonna have to break the cardinal rule and have drinks before 5. But we'll see if I can get through it.
Well, since you're anyway not on 24-hour clock, but AM, PM, you know, what
There you
does
go.
5 mean? I mean, it's...
Of course. So easy to poke fun at the US, isn't it? There's so many different ways you can make fun of us.
No, I actually wanted to give you an excuse to have a drink.
Got it.
Now, so
Excellent.
in terms of storytelling with DV, Stewart, so you would still see a definitive, let's say, schism between what happens in dashboarding and what happens in DV with storytelling.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's hard to know where things are going because there aren't any tools that really do those two things together. Oracle's one of the few.
Yeah, exactly.
Again,
that's the thing.
Say again.
I said, yeah, exactly. That's the thing. That's where my question was coming from. Looking at the competition, you know, others aren't really spending any time on that. So the question is kind of like, okay, where's Oracle going with this?
Yeah, and because there's no, like, quite often when you know, Oracle's been, I won't say guilty, but you know, they've been in catch-up mode in some areas, right? They happen to be leading in this one. Leading to where, you know, I'm not real sure, but the idea that they've got the storytelling aspect, which is usually done in an interactive notebook. They've brought that to sort of the data citizen. We have some ML capabilities in the tool that have been brought to the data citizen. So I think that, you know, the future will show us, you know, the truth is out there, but about where it's headed. But I do think the idea, and obviously, you know, it's not perfect, right? So I had to build some slides elsewhere and bring them in. But I mean, I certainly could see leading, you know, a weekly meeting, a sales call, a quarterly update call, using the same data story over and over again. I also think that because it's designed for ad hoc and sort of discovery users, sometimes the story you're telling is to yourself, right? So you're building out, maybe you're going to share that with someone else, but what you really need is a coherent way to think through your own thoughts about whether or not something, you know, data point A is actually affecting behavior B. And sometimes it's just the case of building the story for yourself to be able to walk through it and understand it, you know, as a journey.
All right.
I mean, one question from my side. You said that you had to do stuff elsewhere, mainly because of type of visualization.
Just the non-data ones, Francesco. So like this one that we're looking
rather
at,
than on new feature in a pure analytical platform.
Repeat that. Make sure I'm,
because like the point that I'm trying to make is you don't want to have DV look like or be going towards like a PowerPoint or a Keynote type of product. You want the analytics bit to move forward, not like all the fashion bits outside of it.
So I think it's a good point. It's an important point. I do want it, right? But is it where they should be spending their time, right? Yeah. So I definitely understand that perhaps it's not where they should be spending their time. But I can tell you there is a big user base of people using interactive notebooks to tell stories, to tell data stories. And those tend to be data scientists. You know, there is a reason why there's that scientist title in there, because they have theories. They want to walk through the story to prove out whether or not their theory is valid. And then if it is, they want to be able to prove it to someone else, meaning that they want to be able to walk through the story, or at least share the notebook with someone who can walk through it on their own. I do think that there is a use for, in the data citizen world, for a click and drag version of that. I'm all in favor of them continuing to enhance this capability. Whether or not I think they should do it at the expense of other features is where I can't, because they only have X amount of capacity. But I would love to see these features, increase. I just don't know that I'm prepared to say that it should at the expense of
others.
Better prompts or whatever, right?
So there was one question coming up in the chat. How difficult is it to add branding? For example, a regular presentation to senior staff who expect it.
Not too tough at all. I mean, if you're thinking about from the data slides, right? So I'll tell you what. Let me just exit out of here. I mean, if the branding that you want to have is images, right? So it's pretty easy for me to drop an image sort of wherever I want to drop it, right? And add some branding. Now, how well, if you're thinking sort of logo, you're probably going to have to go freeform. But in general, you can also, it's a good, the background. So I haven't played with, and maybe some folks on here have, the background. So perhaps you could have a watermarked background. I'm not sure about that. So that might be a way to do it. I'll look into it though. It'd be interesting to see if I could come up with a nice, concise branded, the way that the way that we do with, these slides where actually these slides where I have, my Twitter handles, sort of, that sort of footer that we're used to having on slides that you can see consistently. I have. That would be perhaps challenging. Let me look into that and see. I think a custom background would be the way to do that. But let me test, and maybe I'll tweet about it.
I think I know the direction that this question is coming from. It's more geared toward quote unquote pixel perfect reporting, and yeah. So Mark, if you meant more pixel perfect reporting, then the answer is probably nah, not really. But yeah.
What's the question?
Sorry?
What was the question?
Yeah, with the basically branding. Standard reporting. So.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think there's a gap in picture perfect in this tool. I mean, it's the way we still do that is with BI Publisher. So gap is not the right term. Well, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and say it. I mean, it is a gap because that tool is showing its age, and so we're really missing out on pixel perfect. Hopefully, we might get some pixel perfect capabilities in this tool, and that would probably play well with data storytelling in the ability to perhaps create some data-driven pixel perfect things that could be reused across slides.
Okay, so Mark just qualified his question. So not necessarily BI Publisher pixel perfect, but something somebody could take away and know where it came from and when it came from. So more like headers and footers presumably, or watermarks or something like that.
Yeah, so I think
a template probably.
I think when you go to look at, I'm just looking, and somebody might be able to direct me quicker. There's the option for background.
I believe it's if you go to the properties on the top right.
So it's custom, and so there's an image, right? So I don't know if you guys can still see my screen, right?
Yep.
So there's an option to source the background from an image. So conceivably we could build a white, maybe a dark background with your sort of branding in it, and reuse that from time to time. Now the problem comes probably in that image is per visualization, not for the canvas. So I don't know if there's an option under canvas properties, background. Yeah, there you go. So this is probably very, very doable. And honestly, the next time I give this talk, I'll try to do it that way, because it seems very doable for me to just build, maybe even reuse a slide template that I've built in slides and just bring it in. So yeah, to be determined.
Yeah, I believe as of now, DV is really pure self-service. I don't know if Oracle will add some sort of centralized management to it, like the stuff that you, like as an admin, I could create a template and enforce or have people using it.
Yeah. If you think about it though, you know, there's probably the middle is the right place. But if you think about how it used to be before DV, how hard it was to produce this. I mean, I'll take this any day. But probably something along the lines of, if you think like, I'll just throw it out, like Jira or other suites of tools where you can upload files, but then they automatically get uploaded. They're part of a catalog. That catalog can be shared. There's lots and lots of web-based tools that work that way. So probably it needs to be easy for the user to onboard the content, not hard with like the WebLogic application directories, the way we used to have to do it. It needs to be easy to onboard, but then there needs to be some sort of a catalog approach probably. Will we see that? I don't know. And should we see it at the expense of other things? Probably not, but maybe we'll see some enhancements there.
I mean, the image upload itself is part of the OAS catalog, so the old school catalog, but it hasn't been integrated into DV yet, so you can't use those items.
Okay. So what you're saying is when I upload these images, of course they are. They're being stored in the catalog, right?
Well, not on this side. If you would go to analytics, they would actually be stored in the catalog. Yes, here as well, but they're not being stored as reusable objects. They become part of the objects that you are currently creating. So they would be part of your current canvas.
Got it. Yeah. Just probably embedded in line, probably.
Exactly. Yeah, that's I was searching for that word, inline. Yeah. All right, Johnny. Johnny?
We lost Johnny. Yeah.
So here we are.